Unlocking Business Insights with AWS Config featuring Itaú Unibanco. We know that you are here to know more about Itaú Unibanco, one of the largest financial institutions of the world. You are going to have a chance to. But before, let me introduce myself. My name is Guilherme Greco. I'm a Principal Solutions Architect at AWS. I'm based in Brazil, and I am with other co-presenters that I want you to meet them as well, Matheus and Thiago.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matheus Reis. I'm a Senior Worldwide Solution Architect based in Dallas, Texas. And we also have Thiago.
Hello, everyone. Thiago Moraes. I lead the cloud platform at Itaú.
Awesome. Excellent. Let's get started. In this session, we are going to show to you how to explore the potential or the value of resource configuration. We are going to talk about what is resource configuration from AWS perspective, and then we will cover AWS Config features that can help you to implement this. By the end of this presentation, you are going to have a better understanding on how to implement resource configuration at scale, and even better, how to make business decisions on top of this. But before getting started, I do have a question. Have you ever used resource inventory or resource configuration to make business decisions in your company? Raise your hand. Cool. I can see that we don't have too many people with this background in the room, which means that you are in the right place, because this is exactly what we're going to cover today. We are going to talk about customers' challenge to implement resource configuration, and you'll show how AWS can help you with architectural patterns or with AWS Config. We are going to have a demo for AWS Config. And then we'll hand over to Itaú Unibanco, where Thiago will show how Itaú uses millions of resources across thousands of accounts in different AWS organizations to extract resource configuration and make business decisions on top of that information. Thiago is going to show a demo as well. It's going to be awesome. And then we are going to have key takeaways and resources. Okay? AWS offers you a lot of services, and each one has its own API settings and configurations. It is challenging for customers to keep tracking all the changes that happen on those services. Customers have dynamic landscapes because of modernization journeys, because of pipelines, decentralized operations, because of time to market. We are always evolving our infrastructure and applications. On top of all of these changes, on top of everything, we must have continuous governance and continuous compliance. To be more practical, let's suppose that you are a CTO from any company. You started small. You just have an application. Maybe you are using AWS Control Tower with one AWS organization to have an application located in a specific region. But then you realize that you need to expand your operations to another region. It's going to be easy, right? So it's just a matter of deploying a VPC, then you can deploy the application again. But then you have additional departments with different applications, and you need an additional account. Then you have more products with different applications, different requirements in terms of regions. And again, you are going to have more products in the market, more applications, and more accounts as well. At the end of the day, you can see that maybe you have hundreds or thousands of accounts under one AWS organizations. But it doesn't stop, right? Because of regulatory constraints, you have to create an additional AWS organization, and again, with more accounts and more applications. And remember that you are growing, and you are growing fast. And we are in the middle of a merge and acquisition process, which requires you to have additional organizations, more accounts, and more applications. You can realize that you have a decentralized environment, distributed accounts, but you are doing the right thing. You are following AWS best practice because you have a multi-account strategy. You are handling accounts as logical compartments where you can isolate failures, limits, costs, resources, and access. Everything is fine. You are happy with this. But then a bunch of questions just appeared from your leadership. How many resources do we have? How many of them belongs to a specific business unit, to a specific product? Where are they located? How many of them are compliant or not? What are the trends of our resource configurations? To connect this to the business aspects, you realize that you need resource inventory at scale. You need to understand your historical data because it is important to know what was changed in that resource, when it was changed, and who did that. You have to understand the dependencies between different resources, right? And why not? You have to correlate your configurations with cost because everybody needs to be cost effective. We have to extract insights from our infrastructure. Customers are addressing this challenge using resource configuration. You can think of resource configuration in a way that you can extract data, metadata, information from your resource, and then you can structure this or normalize that in a way that you can store that in a data store. You can see that we have just a JSON file here, right? It has some fields such as relationship, size, network, and security, just describing the resource that I have. You can think, why do I care about this file? But I can tell you that this file is going to be the foundation of resource configuration at scale. And you can ask again, how can I create this file if I have a decentralized or distributed accounts? It is not reasonable to scrape all the service because, as I mentioned, we have different APIs from different services, right? It's not going to be reasonable to scrape different APIs, handle different responses, and save this in a data store, right? But if this is the foundation of resource configuration, how can we do this? Does AWS have any service that can help us to implement this at scale? Yes, we can. We have AWS Config. Show of hands if you have AWS Config enabled in your landing zone. Yeah, a lot of colleagues. But just to recap a little bit. AWS Config is an AWS managed services that is responsible to record changes that happens in your resource. That means that every time that a change happened in your resource, AWS Config, through AWS Config Recorder, will record that. It will allow you to perform rules on top of the change, on top of the resource, in a way that you can compare this with your architectural pattern. You can see if it is compliant or not. You can use your own rule, or you can take advantage of AWS Config managed rules as well. You can have an aggregated view from different resources across accounts, regions, or AWS organizations. You can take advantage of AWS Config integrations with Systems Manager, for instance, and then you can leverage AWS automation documents to perform automations on top of the resources that are not compliant. AWS Config integrates with other services as well. SNS, CloudWatch, S3, CloudTrail Lake, EventBridge. We are going to cover some of them. But we are talking about resource configuration, right? Within Config, Config Recorder is going to be responsible to record the resource configuration. And when it happens, we have a configuration item. And as you can see, we came back to the same file that we were discussing before, right? But now the difference is that that file is managed by AWS Config. We can have attributes, standard attributes for AWS Config, such as metadata, attributes, relationship, and current configuration. Let me drill down each one. Metadata will tell you when the resource was changed, when the change was captured. What is the account ID? Then you have attributes that will show to you what is the resource type, where is the region, where is the availability zone, if it is applicable or not. Then we have relationships. I love this one because using this kind of field, we can see the dependencies between resources. And in this case, you are seeing a security group, right? We can see the instances associated with this. Current configuration will give you detailed information about your resources. Again, we are talking about security group, right? So you can see IP address, CIDRs, and ports. The same configuration item within AWS Config has two states. The first one is configuration history, which is a collection of configuration items over n time period. And then we have configuration snapshot that is a point in time capture. To deliver this, we can use configuration recorder. To record that, we use configuration recorder. And to deliver this, we have the delivery channel. To explain how it works, I will start with configuration history. You have a change in your resource, then configuration recorder will record that, then it will generate a collection of configuration items, Then, delivery channel will forward the collection of configuration items to a bucket that can be located in your own account or in another account. Delivery channel integrates with SNS. You can subscribe Lambdas, SQS, queues, HTTP endpoints to perform automation. And as you can see, delivery channel will forward the collections of configuration items after 6 hours, in a way that the infrastructure team can go to the bucket and have access to the files, to the JSON files, and perform analysis. But if you need online access, online data, you can go directly to AWS Config data plane and perform a query there. But come back to the scenario with the bucket. Let's suppose that the infrastructure team doesn't want to wait for 6 hours, right, to have access to the configuration items. We can perform a point-in-time capture. We can call AWS Config API to generate a point-in-time capture. Then we're going to have the collections of configuration items. And then the same happens, right? Delivery channel will forward the collection of configuration items to the S3 bucket. And the infrastructure team can have access to those files and perform analysis. As you can see, this is a good use case if you are from the infrastructure team and you want to have a picture from everything that is deployed in your account and it is supported by AWS Config. We have configuration snapshot, as I said, configuration history, but we can remove some resource types from being recorded. We have the resource change, and then we go to the configuration recorded, but now the scenario is a little bit different. We have an ephemeral application. Ephemeral means that I have some kind of package or a Terraform module in a way that I'm deploying the application and removing the application. That means that it doesn't make sense to record all the change that happens on those resources because I'm always deploying and removing this. AWS Config allows us to exclude some resource types from being recorded by configuration recorder. This is a good opportunity to be cost-effective. And we have other use case. If you have a non-production account, again, maybe it doesn't make sense to record all the changes that happen in that account, right? So we can use AWS Config to perform a daily basis recording. Again, good opportunity to be cost-effective. As you can see, AWS Config can adapt to your application and can adapt to the purpose of your environment as well. So far, we have configuration history, configuration snapshot. We can exclude some resource from being recorded, right? But what about adding my own data? We can do this because maybe we need to bring my company information into the resource configuration. I need to enrich my data. And even better, maybe I want to use or to create resource configurations for third-party software that is deployed on premises or even in another cloud. AWS Config can allow us to extend the resource configuration capability for something that is outside AWS. Let's suppose that you are from the platform team or an infrastructure team from any company again, and you are in charge of a fleet of EKS clusters. As you can see, EKS is supported by AWS Config, right? So I can see the configuration item there. But as platform team, I need more. I need maybe to know detailed information about my managing node groups, or because I'm responsible to upgrade Kubernetes, I need to bring information from EKS upgrading sides on top of this configuration item as well. We can do this, create custom resource types on AWS Config in a way that I can enrich the data and bring the data that I really need, that really matter for me on top of that. We can do the same for third-party software, right? I have something deployed on premises or in another cloud service provider. Again, I'm able to create a custom resource type within AWS Config and extend the capabilities for resource configuration within AWS. We can do this thanks to CloudFormation Registry. CloudFormation Registry allows us to create a customized schema which will generate a custom resource within AWS. We can customize stacks in CloudFormation using CloudFormation Registry, and we can call AWS Config APIs to put resource configuration and create configuration items for that specific custom resource. As you can see, it's a great opportunity to extend the resource configuration capability from AWS Config and create custom resource types. With that being said, I will hand over to Mateus.
Thank you very much. So, talk about recording and recording the configuration changes is very important to resource at, compliance at scale, resource inventory at scale. But now we need to talk about the compliance itself. So AWS Config helps with that. So let's take a look at this example first. So I know, based on this particular change, that on October 17th, 2024 at 3:11 p.m., my security group with port 22 had a specific IP address that was able to connect with that particular EC2 that has attached this security group. But something happened in between. Again, AWS Config helps with that to make sure that you know all the changes. I know that 3:23 p.m., someone that has access changed that IP to now everybody can access through that security group at port 22. So it is bad, it is good, I actually don't know. I need to have something in place that can help me to assess that, to detect that. So AWS Config has rules, and that's going to help you at compliance at scale. So how AWS Config rules works, you can actually have two types of trigger mechanism. The first one, it is periodic. You can run a rule at a given time, every an hour or every 3 hours or every day. Or the most common one, it is based on the resource change. In this particular case with the security group, I want to make sure that every time that I change a security group, I will capture that. So AWS Config rules are connected with the recorder itself, and the recorder will have a config rule. So that rule itself, it is a desired state. The desired state means that it is, I wanted to check based on the research that it just happened, match with the desired state. And if it is, the evaluation happened, if it is compliant, which means that the research change and the desired state are matched, it will be compliant. But in this case, in the security group example, it doesn't match. So it would mean that it is not compliant. So what I can do with my AWS Config, it is integrated with System Manager automation to bootstrap, to kick it off, to trigger automatically a document that will return back on at that security group to the original state, which is the desired state. So for that, I have capabilities to maintain automatically, continuously deploy, continuous compliance, continuous go over without any human interaction. Config rules, we have two types. We have manage, and also we have custom. So manage rules, we have more than 500 ready to use. Minimal configurations required, or even no configurations required. Those rules are maintained by AWS. So this is a couple of rules that we have, like restricted SSH, which is, for the example that we just talked about it. Required tags is a very common one as well. RDS, if you have RDS, want to make sure that data storage is encrypted. You can leverage that managed rule. But if you find among these 500 plus rules that doesn't fit to your governance and compliance needs, you can create you by yourself a rule. So in this case, any company can create rule 1, rule 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, and so on. You can leverage AWS Lambda, CloudFormation Guard, and also RDK to help that creation process. In particular example right here, this is a rule that I created for Python with Python to just assess if on a specific instance type, it is an allowed list of the instance types that I want. As you can see, and I know that the font is quite short, it's actually 121 lines. It's a very long Lambda. You can have much easier way to do that. And the way that we recommend also, it is using CloudFormation Guard. So that same rule that you guys just saw it right there, it is that 5 rules right there. So 5 lines of rules, the same rule that I was able to write in a Lambda with 121 lines. And CloudFormation Guard is our domain-specific language. It's a policy as a code tool. It is actually available on GitHub, if you can check it out. It is integrated with CloudFormation, of course, but also with config and also hooks and so on. It helps you to have less error handlers. There is no Lambda because config abstract that layer for you. You can do everything through the console or even through API. There is a QR code right there with GitHub sample rules using Guard that you can check it out. If you wanted to leave that, feel free to do so. And by the end of the day, it's going to help you to having more easy authoring and also deployment, right? Because there is no Lambda by the end of the day. With that, we need to understand also that config, it is a foundation service. It is so foundation, other servers on AWS are actually using config behind the scenes. So as you can see, everything starts with a recording, and I have the rules, that we talk about it, but in the list above, there is many other AWS services using AWS config rules, like Security Hub, AWS Control Tower, backup. All those servers are using AWS config for the purpose of detection, right? So for instance, AWS Security Hub can ingest those AWS config rules to result in providing a more comprehensive view of the security and compliance posture that you have based on the framework. Control Tower you use as a detective controls. Outage Manager also used to incorporate into the assessments to a specific framework that you wanted to assess and collect evidence towards. So in this example, we wanted to share that config, it is a core compliance service on AWS that you can leverage off. Now, I have the recording. I know how to track my compliance, but now I need to put all this data together, right? So for that, we need to talk about AWS Config Aggregator. So Aggregator, it is a read-only view of data that you collect with config, using such as the configuration items itself, the compliance information across your many regions, and also many accounts. So the way that it works, you have config enabled in your accounts, in your regions. That data is being collected by config, and that data will be sent to an aggregator, and you have the aggregator view all together. Very simple, very easy. AWS Config Aggregator is a free of charge. You can actually create many aggregators as you want, and you can have different types of aggregator as well. You have individual account type and also organization aggregator type. Let's take a look on one of the examples how you can leverage aggregator. So if you are in one account and you have many regions, you can select one region to have that aggregator and send all that information to that centralized region. You can use a source authorization mechanism to authorize each account individually. Same if you have one organization and you have many accounts, you can select, and we do recommend that you have an aggregated account to see all that information in one specific account. Even further, if you wanted to have external accounts sending that information to a specific aggregator account in this specific individual account aggregator, you are able to do so. But moving forward, aggregation via AWS organization, it is interesting to collect all that information in your AWS organization account because there is no need to authorization to each account. When you trust at the level of AWS organization, all that data will be sent to the management account. But as we recommend to have restrict access into the management account and also not workloads in the management accounts, our recommendation best practice is to leverage delegated admin. So config has capabilities to have a delegated admin, which means that all that data from your AWS organization, all accounts on your AWS organization that has config, instead of sending to the management account, will be sent to a member account of your choice. which you have across the board. Now, on top of that, you want to make sure that you can also query that information, because having all that information is interesting, but I wanted to actually take insights of it. And you can use advanced query for this. So configure advanced query. It is the way that you have ad hoc queries using SQL statement on top of aggregator. That's why aggregator and aggregator choice and aggregator design is so important, because you're going to use query on top of that. And it is very simple, right? It is using structure in a query language, SQL commands. You can check it out about cost optimization. I wanted to know specifically if how many EBS volumes I have unattached when EC2, or if I have ports open in security group, I can have all of that. That will improve my security and also operation intelligence as well. So with that, let's go with the demo and show how that actually works. So as you can see, I am already in my delegated admin account for config. I wanted to show briefly that the recording piece that Greco was mentioned, you can edit your recording. By default, it is continuous recording, but as you can see, you can choose daily recording, and you can override these settings from the default to basically exclude, for instance, global recorder from the recorder from config. This is actually a best practice for cost optimization. Global resource like IAM, we only recommend you to record in one region because it's a global, right? You don't need to record in every single region. So you can override the global settings in order to help excluding some ephemeral resource like Greco was mentioned to optimize your cost on config. Moving over, what you can see in Aggregator, I have the types of aggregators that I mentioned to you before. I have my demo orgs aggregator, which is actually my organization aggregator, but I am in a member account. So I had that delegated to this specific account. So if I select this dashboard, which is, by the way, we launched this last re:Invent, it is a very low-hanging fruit to check it out with some widgets that we have about your compliance based on an aggregator. So you can see top resource with non-compliance, summary of those resources, number of accounts that is non-compliant resource. Same for inventory management. Using the same aggregator, I can have information, so what is the top resource type by resource count. I can have that information and see how it can help with my cost optimization. Again, this is free of charge. You need to only have an aggregator. Make sure you have the design set ready for use, like I mentioned before, and you have that widget very easy to use. And more important, the aggregator piece that we are talking, it is about the advanced query that you can have, the SQL statement. So we have 58 queries ready to use that you can just click and use it. But if you wanted to create a new one, I'm going to select my aggregator, and you can create the SQL statement right here. But if you're not familiar with SQL statements, you can actually use a generative AI that is in preview. So if I wanted to do show me all security groups with port 22 open. And again, if I'm an auditor, I don't know SQL statement, I'm not familiar with the SQL statement. This is very useful because I can have that delegated account, give that access, and as you can see, the SQL statement was generated. I can populate it below, actually, and run it. And I have the information. If I wanted to put, for instance, AWS region, I already have the autocomplete, and I also have that information right here, very easy to understand with advanced query. Now back to our presentation. This information is very, very valuable regarding the resource configuration itself. But it's not just about the resource configuration. It is about the business value that it can extract from that resource configuration itself. So for that, I'd like to invite Thiago to show about the Itaú use case.
Thank you, Matheus.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Thiago. I lead the cloud platform team at Itaú. Thank you for having me here. So Itaú is a universal bank with 100 years of history. It's the largest financial institution in Latin America with more than 96,000 employees in Brazil and overseas. But before we started with the technical details, let me talk about how we are organized in our technology teams. So on the bottom line here of this slide, you're going to see that you have the CTOs. We are the enablers. We build platforms so other teams can build on top of us. And my team, I see it here on the cloud infrastructure and operations. On the top of this slide are the CIOs. They are the team focused on building solutions for our customers. So the products that our customers is going to use and then build solutions on top of our platforms. When you see in the middle of this slide, there's a cloud governance. That it's very important for us on our modernization strategy and on our technology strategy. What we do here on the cloud governance is the glue between the CTOs and the CIOs when we see the technology strategy. So here we provide the modernization roadmaps, AWS best practices, FinOps information, training certification, all this information aggregated in one centralized view, but we provide to the CIOs to do the distributed execution of our strategy. And why that is important for us? When you look at our footprint in AWS, we have thousands of accounts, so more than 9,000 accounts, 5 AWS organizations, and 40 million configuration items distributed across the organization. And on top of that, we have several teams operating this infrastructure each and every day. So we added up complexity on top of what we have to manage. And how can we get information about all those resources in one single pane of glass and answer some questions about compliance, cost, and all the other challenges that we have when we have to operate at that scale? And this set us to 3 major pillars to start using AWS Config. Number 1, visibility. So how can I get visibility about all the resources that I have deployed in my organization, in my platform? And how can I aggregate this information in one single view? Monitoring. It's very important for us to understand how the resources are compliant or not based on the rules that we push to the infrastructure, to the organization itself. And the third, it's planning. So how can I provide upfront information to our teams on how they should plan ahead to fix those problems, or how can prioritize that work on the day-to-day operations of each and every team. So with that, we started our journey to build what we call the cloud metadata. At first, we had one engineer that would go logged in one audit account that we have on our organization, type in a bunch of queries, pull out the data, and then we have a CSV file or an Excel file that we go through that file and understand number of resources, what we had distributed in the organization. However, this audit account, it's a very sensitive resource in our organization because it's all the aggregated logs that go to that account. So we're doing kind of a not compliance way of working on that strategy. So then we evolved that. We extended as using a best practice. We had a delegated account where we aggregated the resource-wide information with AWS Config, and now I have a separate account that receives all the inventory from all of my resources and configuration items in one single account. However, I still had my platform team doing manual queries, typing and exporting data to have that single pane of glass of what we had on the platform. And then we started adding a data pipeline strategy to that data, to this information. So now, instead of having someone pulling data manually, we added AWS Glue job to extract that data, and then push this data through this data pipeline, cleaning the data, and have a centralized view of all those resources. So now, my engineer, instead of having to manually type those queries, now he have just a single pane of glass with Amazon QuickSight with all this information. But then we wanted to add more context related to the business. So how can I have my business teams understand that those type of resources, understand the ownership of that data? With that, we decided to provide this data to everyone. So how can I make all that data available about my infrastructure to all the teams, not only the platform teams, but also the business units? And then we started the data correlation. So now I pull data from my CMDB, I can correlate the owners of those accounts and put that information together with the organization topology or organization structure that I have. And now the business unit teams can see themselves and their resources connected to each and every layer of their topology or the team structure. With that, now the business unit teams doesn't require us, the platform teams, to push data for them. So the centralized management we provide for them, but the distributed execution of the strategy are in the bottom of, in the edges of the organization. So the business unit teams now can understand what are the strategy that they have about back level, if they want to know about FinOps, so how my strategy of relating to the resources that I'm deploying in my infrastructure correlate with costs, so how the FinOps strategy are aligned with those resources that are deployed. As we evolved that strategy, we understood that the product teams as well wanted to enrich the data. So for example, the EKS team, container teams, want to have more visibility about the add-ons that I have installed in each and every cluster deployed in the organization. Or the Lambda teams want to understand version of the runtimes that we have deployed. With that, we employed a strategy that now the teams can push data or push into the pipeline specific code to enrich the data for that specific product, and now we can, through the pipeline, enrich the data and have different visibilities or different views of that data for each and every team. So platform teams can understand how the resources are distributed across the organization. The product teams can enrich the data and capture more insights about the products that we have deployed, and the business unit teams can understand their infrastructure and their architecture and decide whether they should prioritize for cost or eventually prioritize for resiliency, depending on the information that they see on that platform. And with that, I'm going to go to a demo here, so bear with me on this. So this is the initial view that one analyst or one engineer would see if they log into the quick site. So here we are seeing the Lambda product specific. So here I can filter out if I want to see a specific data for my organization. So I'm CTO or owner of a business unit. I can filter out here and I can understand how the back level for specific runtimes for Lambda. With the data enriched from the CMDB, now I can see the tier of the service, so the criticality of that specific service and how the back level are impacting that specific journey. So if I'm the owner of that specific product, I can go there and prioritize work on those back level Lambdas to move them through a more newer version of that runtime. At the same time, in the middle section here, you can see the distribution of Lambda functions per runtime. So I can understand how the distributed workloads or Lambda functions are across each and every tier and each and every runtime. And also, I can see a breakdown per environment. So I can understand how my production environment, QA, and development have this impact in terms of Lambda distribution. And what is interesting here, now I can have visibility on how the impact of this back level of runtimes will impact my infrastructure through time. So remember that I mentioned planning up ahead. Now the business unit teams can plan up when they should focus time or engineering effort to work through that back level. And here is a more detailed view for each and every team and each and every tribe, so they can understand how that specific engineering team will be impacted by that back level. At the same time, if you go to EC2, I want to understand how many EC2s do I have deployed right now, so running in my environment. And at the same time, what is interesting with the business-related aspect of this data is if I'm using a lot of old generation EC2s, I want to push that generation up because I'm spending money in old generation and can get more efficiency with that strategy. So here I can have a single pane of glass to see each and every version of EC2s. So I have a T2 here. Let me just zoom in. So I have the tiers of services, how they are using each and every type of EC2 instance. And here I can see that I have a C1 median. So that's the worst case scenario. I'm running a very dated EC2 and I want to bump this up to a newer version, a C5 or C6 or C7. And here, the owner of the account can have like insights about the cost. So hey, I'm spending a lot of money with old version of EC2s, and I have opportunities to save money with that specific insight. And now, instead of the platform team all the time pushing information to the business units, they can proactively go there and capture this information and then prioritize which part of the system they should work on for that specific scenario. And last, when you see EKS, because of AWS now charging for extended support for those older versions, it's important for me to know if I'm being impacted by this extended support. So if you go down here, I can see that the cost of that infrastructure or for EKS, but at the same time, how much money I'm paying for extended support. So now I understand that I have a resiliency issue eventually because AWS might bump up the version without me knowing about this, and I'm paying extended support for that. So there's two aspects of resiliency and cost effectiveness that we want to be aware of. And at the same thing, I can see the trend of how many clusters are going to be backlevel or outdated through time, and then I can prioritize work on top of that. Okay. So back to the presentation, we mentioned that we were planning for 3 major pillars. So visibility, so how can I see my environment, understand my environment, and see the resources that I have deployed. Monitoring, so how can I understand the impact of the non-compliant resources across my organization, and how can I act upon those resources. Third, planning. So now the teams can understand what are the impact of their infrastructure and how can these back level or any kind of non-compliant resources can be prioritized on their work. And last, what we are thinking about the future is how can provide augmented insights for the engineers. So how can I leverage generative AI to capture the insights about this data and provide more specific and detailed information for each and every engineer on how they should prioritize work or upgrade their infrastructure as a whole. Now I get back to Mateus.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I don't know about you, but that was gold. Understanding how you can leverage intelligence on top of config. And by the way, everything that Thiago just mentioned, it is powered by AWS Config. So that's how important this service is for AWS and also for you as a customer. So I'm very excited for this use case and also how you guys are going to leverage AWS Config data as another level. So just doing a little recap here for the session that we learned so far. It is AWS Config. It is primarily, most of the customers think about it as a compliance, and it is true, it is compliance, but it can also be used for resource inventory management. As you saw in Thiago's presentation and how Itaú is leveraging this, it brings a lot of value. And you are already using that. You have that data in your buckets. You have access to that data. So please take advantage of that because that information is very key. It can also help with troubleshooting and remediation. Like I mentioned before, I'm not 100% sure when the thing that just happened, you can go back and take a look at in the history. Of course, you can also use CloudTrail to help with that, but all config together with Trail helps you to troubleshoot at another level. So a few takeaways from this session that we wanted to give for everyone here, and of course, everyone attending this session. It is config at the scale that you can have. It is for a resource inventory configuration. You can see that you have that data, that information for usage right now. You're paying for that money. You're paying for that data, so you can leverage that information as well. You can extract value from that configuration information. So as you saw in Thiago's presentation, there's much value that can be correlated to each other to have business insights of it. And doing that, you are going to be able to make driven decisions because you're going to be able to prioritize which one of the products or which one of the migrations or even what do you do in the next year or the next month. So this is a few research that I wanted to give a few minutes on the screen. So first QR code, it is about how to get started with config. The middle one, it is a YouTube guideline for tracking configurations using AWS Config. The third one, it is because aggregator is so important to this whole configuration, it is a blog post about how to set up organization widely and how you can use aggregator with your AWS organization. There is a few call-outs for the kiosks. So we have at the Village in the Aspo, VR experience booth giveaway swags. We do have a booth specifically for governance compliance. So we have a specialist right there. If you have questions regarding config, control tower organizations, I'm going to be there as well, Greco. So make sure to swing by and ask your questions. And we wanted to thank you all. So thank you very much for being in this session. Don't forget, please, to complete the survey and stay tuned to more stuff like that, and use case like that. With our team is going to be releasing more stuff regarding resource configuration management. If you wanted to ask questions to myself, Tiago, Greco, are going to be there at the back. So thank you very much, and have a great reInvent, great rest of reInvent. Thank you.